All right, you guys asked for it. Last scheduled stop on our trip. And if you look over my shoulder, you'll see we are at the famous Grimille Grove. So I have an 11 o'clock appointment to get in here. It's a very old site. The caretaker, Patrick, has it now. And he's a bit of a history buff. So I have a feeling we're gonna learn some cool stuff today. See some cool stuff today. Here, this is a 2-acre site. Lots of pretty cool water catchment, cisterns. And as you can see, I mean, it's covered in fruit trees. I mean, I see bananas and sapodillas and coconuts, and this almost looks like a big bay rum or allspice, mangoes, avocados. Here's a Cattleya guava. Lots of interesting stuff here. I'm really excited to walk around and give you all the full tour, so hold tight. Grimille Grove, Big Pine Key, coming at you. Here we go. Hey Patrick, where we at?
We're at Grimille Grove, the infamous Grimille Grove, founded in the mid-1950s by Adolf Grimal, engineer from Michigan, who redesigned this property into an ultimate tropical fruit grove, which was coined the Garden of Eden back in the 80s. So we're restoring this property and trying to bring it back to its legendary status, and even more so, we're creating this time around a community involvement and really the heart of a local food movement here at Grimille Grove.
I love it. Nice.
So I guess.
So how big's the property and when did you get it?
All right, so the property is 2 acres, just shy of 2 acres, and in 2011 I found it working on a local food movement. Someone told me about the property, said, Patrick, with what you're trying to do here, this would be the perfect, place to home base for you. And in 2012 I got it under contract and finally bought it in November 2013, 3 days after my wife gave birth to twin girls.
Wow, so I guess it was an overgrown jungle when you got here?
Completely overgrown, hundreds and hundreds of Brazilian pepper, trash all over the place, drug paraphernalia. It was a mess. It was just full of invasives. A lot of the trees were really suffering that were left on the property. They're just shaded out and whatnot. So it was a massive project, and with very little to no funding, and it was definitely a kind of a either courageous or stupid act on my part.
I think it was pretty courageous myself. At least you were out here uncovering some hidden treasures.
Well, and that, what was fun about this was the one thing I knew was if I could get the story out there, I felt like the community would fall in love with the project. And that was kind of and I knew the story more than anyone else. No one really knew it yet. So I was researching it. Bill Whitman's book, 5 Decades of Tropical Fruit, had a lot of resources about Grimal, and that was my Bible to begin with. And then just starting to clear this place in the early days, honestly, for me, it was a bit of an escape from the noise of the world, all the politics and this and that. And so I just used to just like coming here, and there was a vibe here. Like Grimal definitely left, despite the drugs and the chaos that happened, for the 15 years after Grimal died. There was still a vibe that there was a presence, that someone cared and loved for this property and for these trees, that anyone that stepped on it, they might be overwhelmed by the state it was in, but they could catch that vibe. And so that's what I went with. I went with a vibe.
Glad to see you saw the hope. Let's check the place out. Let's walk around. Yeah,
Grimal,
a little bit of the history. Yeah, why not?
So Adolf Grimal was an interesting gentleman. He was a tool and die maker from Lithuanian descent, first generation American, and he was born in West Virginia, and his family moved around the time of the Second World War up to Detroit, as they were all they were all machinists and tool die making and stuff like that. So he really made a name for himself in that field. And he also always had a interest in both film. He was an amateur filmmaker as well as an amateur gardener. And so he was growing stuff up in Michigan. He had some blueberry fields, and he had a lot of nut groves and stuff like that. And he also designed, he and his dad built his this really cool house. It was his family told me about that, with it had an underground like kind of a bat cave entrance to the house. and where he was working on his Winnebago from scratch. So before these were big, he was working on his own version, and he was a man before his times. He was, he's definitely an inventor of sorts, and he also built his own 3D underwater camera, where he welded two cameras together, creating a 3D effect. So he's doing all that kind of stuff. And after his dad died, I guess it was probably in the early 50s, he decided he wanted to get out of Michigan and kind of do his own thing. He obviously was very close with his dad. His mom died young, and once he died, I think the close relationship, he just wanted to see the nature within the United States. And we have film footage of him traveling the national parks of the United States, capturing wildlife film and stuff like that. Eventually made his way down to the Florida Keys, where he was doing underwater films of the reefs, and we have some footage of that as well. And anyways, he fell in love with Big Pine Key. I mean, for a reclusive gentleman like himself, Big Pine Key in the 1950s is pretty good for a hermit type person. There was no one really around, and basically his love for nature just really, he found his calling here in Big Pine Key, and cleared this 2-acre property down to Cap Rock, and then he started dynamiting and digging out the Cap Rock and making basically raised garden beds and creating microclimates to grow tropical fruit trees. Luckily, he had some assistance from the Rare Fruit Council in Miami, specifically Bill Whitman, who was they were very close. And Whitman was a great advisor for Grimal, because Grimal really brought that engineering background. He brought engineering into horticulture, and that's why he was successful down here in the Keys, where many people weren't. But Whitman really gave him some background on growing tropical fruit, as did Carl Campbell. Dr. Carl Campbell was also assisted and advised Grimal with different plants and stuff to work with. So Grimal, we think around the mid-50s, I think he bought the property and really started working on it in the late 50s. He basically, we're going to go for a walk, and we're going to show you what he designed here, and also point out some trees that Grimal introduced to the United States.
Nice.
So when we interviewed Dr. Richard Campbell about Adolph Grimal, he had an interesting story that his dad told him. So when Richard was a young lad, maybe, I don't know, maybe he was 12 or something, his dad brought him to the Grimal estate. And his dad told Richard, he said, "You're about to meet a man you never want to go to war with." Just meaning that the guy won't give up, like just the tenacity of that old man. And so that was something that stuck with Richard, I guess for the rest of his life. And Richard used to come down here with both Bill Whitman and his dad, and they continued to, I think, graft some of the trees and things like that, even after Grimal passed away. One of those trees was the Lancia Mango, and Grimal introduced this back in 1967. This is basically Chris Rollins who told me this story, and it was in the Tropical Fruit News magazine, I think from 1998 or something like that. There was an article. Anyways, he went in 1967 to the Lancia Gardens there, where the old Pompano Botanical Garden is there. And Grimal was just going for like the perfect mango. There's a big hybrid of mangoes in this grove at the garden. And Grimal had a thing with fruit. He liked bigger was better for Grimal. That was philosophy. There's an interesting lemon story I can tell you about from his days in Michigan. But bigger was better, and he loved this tree. It didn't have a name, it was just marked with a number, but the fruit was enormous. So supposedly he grafted and brought it back. That's the story that I got. And he planted it here, and in I guess in the 90s, Richard Campbell started coming down and grafting the tree and bringing it back up to Fairchild, and then I guess they popularized it in early 2000 at a mango festival, their annual mango festival. Anyway, so a lot of the credit goes to Grimal introducing this. He called it Lancia because that's where he got it from, And I recently pruned this this lychee tree back. It's a Mauritius lychee. But there's a really interesting story. There's actually a lot of dead wood on it, so I pruned it back.
Looks like an older tree, yeah.
Oh, it's an old tree. It's definitely an old. So here's the story. This is really interesting. Anyway, so I finally found Grimille's family. It took me about 4 years to find them. They the only information I had from any kind of familiar source was the deed when Grimille's Trust sold it to the previous owner in Orlando. And I started reaching out to these names, finding where they live and this and that. And I never had any luck. And then finally I just started doing people searches and finding any relative that might exist, and then I just started messaging them on Facebook. Finally, after a few months, that worked, and I finally found his family, and they reached out to me. So we flew up to Michigan to interview them about Grimille, because we had no background on the man. All we had was this tropical fruit hunter, basically from the 70s to when he passed away in 97. So I wanted the story behind the guy. Anyways, so they had some great stories, both up in Michigan, but also about some of the fruit trees. They would come down and visit them. Anyways, one of their favorite story was the Lychee Story, and not sure if it's this lychee tree or if it was another lychee tree, but anyways, the story is Grimal wanted to get a lychee, and instead of going to Homestead where he could have got a lychee from a nursery there, he decides to travel to southern China. And this is in 1964, when the relationship between the United States and China was not well. I mean, it was Cold War era, but Grimal heads to China. So he goes to this palace where he wants to get this lychee specimen, and he's forbidden to enter the palace. And so as the family story goes, he befriends a Buddhist monk who smuggles out the lychee for him, and then he flies back here and plants it. So that's the story that his family has in their family
from
history.
seed, I take it.
I guess from seed. I mean, they're not horticulturists or whatever. That's part of the story. Didn't really get, but it was just interesting that this is part of their family tradition. This story, and what's really I find fascinating, because we'll talk about a couple other trees, is for a man who's so reclusive, that had, people said he didn't have very good communication skills and this and that. When it came to tropical fruit, that guy could get to the Buddhist monk, to like an indigenous farmer in Peru, to like whatever he needed, to the United Fruit Company, getting stuff from them. So like, very interesting how something would turn on with him when it came to acquiring that rare tropical fruit. Here, but so this is actual ground level that Grimal was working with. So this is the cap rock. This is what our ground in Big Pine Key looks like. We don't really have much soil. So anyways, Grimal, this whole acre is all raised garden beds. There's about 40 of these different beds. So he poured the concrete, and then with a pickaxe, he picked out the cap rock, so you can see how far it goes down there. All right. And then he trucked in.
Did I read high quality soils from the mainland or something?
Yeah, you got a lot of silica sand and stuff like that.
Wow, some real dirt.
Some real dirt, good drainage.
Yeah.
So he brought that in, and then he went collecting rare tropical fruit trees. And then he had Bill Whitman and Carl Campbell and all these different people collecting stuff as well. And a lot of times they would plant it down here because the keys are a little warmer. We're a little more tropical. We don't get those cold fronts that kill some of these ultra tropicals. Like this breadfruit right here, just loves it here. This is 3 years old, this tree.
They are beautiful.
And we got fruit this year for the first time.
So that local restaurant serving the breadfruit, did it come from this tree?
Yeah, a couple of them came from this tree. We also have a Samoan tree in the back, and then we also have a neighbor who has a massive tree as well.
Wow.
And then I planted this a couple years ago.
Cercopia.
Yeah.
Wow. This is nature's gummy worm, huh?
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. So he had his own Grimal carambola as well.
Really?
Yeah, but if you come around the other side, you'll get a nice shot of this.
Heavy producer carambola. Whoa, here we go.
You can get a nice shot going up into the tree.
Original Arkin, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, are you the guardian of the carambola?
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, hey. Oh, nice. As you can see, overachievers. These things don't play. Oh, there's a nice cluster. So y'all get the lighting on that.